If you've been dealing with tinnitus for any length of time, you've probably come across the name Lenire. Maybe your audiologist mentioned it, or you found it when you were searching for treatments for tinnitus that were actually backed by science, not just testimonials and marketing ads. And you've got questions. That's fair, because there are a lot of devices out there making big claims about tinnitus relief, and most of them have zero credible research behind them. Lenire is different. It's FDA approved, and it's been through multiple large-scale clinical trials, and this is what I want to focus on today. There's now real-world data from 3 independent United States clinics confirming those trial results hold up outside of just controlled conditions.
If you're navigating hearing loss or struggling with ringing in your ears, then you've come to the right place. The All Ears Hearing and Tinnitus podcast is your go-to source for expert insights, real stories, and cutting-edge solutions in hearing health. We'll dive into the latest advancements in hearing healthcare, explore groundbreaking treatments for tinnitus, and offer practical tips for better hearing. Here to help you tune into a world of better hearing, here's your host from Timpanogos Hearing and Tinnitus, Dr. Layne Garrett.
I'm Dr. Layne Garrett, founder of Timpanogos Hearing and Tinnitus in Utah, and I've been treating tinnitus for over 20 years. We offer Lenire in our clinic, but I don't recommend it to everyone with tinnitus. Today, I want to walk you through what the research actually shows, what these numbers mean in real life, and who is this device for and not appropriate for. Before I get into all this data, let me explain what Lenire is doing and why it works, because tongue stimulation for tinnitus sounds strange until you understand the mechanisms behind it. Lenire is bimodal neuromodulation. Bimodal means stimulating 2 sensory pathways simultaneously: sound through the ears via Bluetooth headphones, and mild electrical pulses delivered to the surface of the tongue through a device they call the tongue tip. Those 2 inputs happen in a synchronized, coordinated pattern. Now, before you ask, I'll answer. Why the tongue? Well, the tongue has dense sensory connections running directly into the brainstem, the same region that processes sound. When you stimulate both pathways at the same time, you're driving the brain to reorganize those circuits. Researchers call this targeted plasticity, using paired sensory inputs to retrain the brain activity that's creating a sound that isn't actually there. That's the mechanism here, but I don't treat patients based on mechanism alone. You need clinical trial data to validate theory, and then real-world data to validate that those trial results mean something when a regular audiologist is treating a regular patient in a regular clinic. Both bodies of evidence now exist for Lenire, and the picture they're painting is consistent here. The pivotal trial that drove the FDA approval was the THI study, published in Nature Communications in 2024. It enrolled 112 participants and used a well-designed control condition: 6 weeks of sound-only stimulation, followed by 6 weeks of full bimodal treatment, sound plus tongue stimulation, with participants serving as their own control group. In patients with moderate or worse tinnitus, those with a tinnitus handicap inventory of at least 38, that's what the FDA says the Lenire is for, bimodal treatment produced a clinically meaningful response in nearly 59% of participants, compared to only 43% when they were using sound alone. That's statistically significant and enough to convince the FDA. 2 things that are important to know, though. First, a clinically meaningful response means an improvement of at least 7 points on the tinnitus handicap inventory. That's a measurable reduction in how much tinnitus interferes with daily life. Second, the trial found that 70.5% of patients who got no benefit at all from sound-only treatment went on to respond to the full bimodal protocol. The tongue stimulation component is doing real work that sound therapy alone cannot replicate. Across 3 different tent trials, combined more than 500 patients now have been enrolled, and the consistent finding: the majority of patients with moderate to severe tinnitus respond to Lenire, and that relief has been shown to persist for at least 12 months after the treatment period ends. Now, this is where things get even more interesting. Trials are very controlled environments, strict inclusion criteria, supervised protocols, optimal conditions. Real-world patients are messier. More comorbidities getting in the way, more variability in compliance with treatment, being treated by different audiologists with different levels of tinnitus expertise. The question that matters to me: do these results hold up in real-world practices? The first published U.S. real-world analysis came from McMahon and Lim, published in Nature Communications Medicine in 2025. one of the largest real-world analyses ever conducted for a tinnitus treatment device. 220 patients with moderate or worse tinnitus using Lenire at home for 2 30-minute sessions daily over about 12 weeks. The results? 91.5% of them showed a clinically meaningful reduction in tinnitus by week 12. Average tinnitus handicap inventory improvement was 27.8 points. The difference between tinnitus dominating your day and it fading into the background when you could actually focus on other things again. I want to be transparent. The lead author of that study is a commercial Lenire provider, and the co-author has disclosed financial relationships with Neuromod, who makes Lenire. The study passed peer review at Nature Journal, but that context matters when you're evaluating evidence, which is exactly why the second and third data sets are important. The second real-world data analysis was published in the American Journal of Audiology in early 2026. 140 patients at a separate U.S. clinic. An 81.8% responder rate, average THI reduction of 23.8 points over 12 weeks. The third was from Tobias and Batty Hearing Wellness in Boston, published in preprint in January 2026. Peer review is still pending, but it analyzed 97 patients with no conflicts of interest disclosed. It's also the first U.S. real-world study to measure outcomes using both the THI and the Tinnitus Functional Index. Tinnitus handicap responder rate, 84.1% got better. TFI, 73.4. Let me simplify what all that means for a patient sitting in a clinic. 3 independent clinics, 3 different patient populations, 3 different research teams. The same finding keeps showing up. Most people who qualify for Lenire get meaningful relief. That's a real-world evidence picture that's very hard to dismiss. If you're watching this and wondering whether you'd even qualify for something like Lenire, that's exactly what we do during a proper tinnitus assessment. Not just whether you have tinnitus, but whether this specific treatment makes clinical sense for your situation. The study out of Boston used both the Tinnitus Handicap Inventory and the Tinnitus Functional Index, and that's worth a brief explanation. The THI gives you a broad picture, how much tinnitus is interfering with your daily life overall. The TFI is more granular, scoring across 8 specific domains: sleep, emotional distress, concentration, sense of control, quality of life, and others. Smaller changes show up more clearly there. The fact that Lenire showed meaningful improvement on both of these measures tells us this isn't just a global impression of feeling better, it's showing up in sleep, in concentration, in emotional response, and that's a more complete picture of the improvement that you actually can see. The FDA-approved Lenire for adults 18 and older with subjective tinnitus of at least moderate severity, so a tinnitus handicap inventory score of at least 38. That threshold exists because the data showed the strongest improvement in that type of person. People with milder tinnitus showed less robust outcomes. Lenire also requires some baseline hearing. Significant hearing loss beyond certain thresholds affects your candidacy, and that gets evaluated before we fit you with Lenire. And this isn't a quick fix either. It's at least a 12-week commitment, 2 sessions a day for 30 minutes. For the right patient, the payoff is significant, but candidacy really does matter. If your tinnitus is mild and not really affecting your daily life, this probably isn't where you go to start. But if it's affecting your sleep, your focus, or your ability to get through the day, that's exactly the population where the data shows the best results. The American Tinnitus Association doesn't endorse specific treatments as a policy, but they do recognize Lenire specifically as the most widely used FDA-approved device of its kind, noting that clinical trial and real-world data have shown it can significantly reduce symptoms, particularly when managed by skilled tinnitus professionals. Now, that's not an endorsement, but it's a meaningful recognition from the leading United States patient advocacy organization for tinnitus. In practice, Lenire works best as part of a broader plan. Patients who are also addressing their sleep, stress, and engaging with some sort of cognitive behavioral therapy tend to do better than those treating it as a standalone fix. Tinnitus is a central nervous system condition and it responds to comprehensive care much better. The clinical trials showed Lenire works. 3 independent real-world data sets now confirm those results hold up in the real practices across the country. So here's the takeaway. Lenire belongs in this conversation for patients with moderate to severe tinnitus who have not gotten sufficient relief from hearing aids or sound therapy alone, and it needs to be prescribed and monitored by someone with genuine tinnitus expertise, not as an add-on offering by a clinic that happens to stock Lenire as a device. The bar for evidence-based tinnitus care has gone up. This is what that looks like. If you want to dig deeper into evidence-based tinnitus treatment, we've put together a learning center with detailed breakdowns on what's backed by research and what is not. You can find a link in the description below. And if you're here in northern Utah and your tinnitus is affecting your quality of life, don't wait and hope. Come in for a proper evaluation in one of our clinics. We'll give you an honest assessment of whether Lenire or anything else actually makes sense for your situation. You can find a link to make an appointment in the description below as well.
A world of better hearing and relief from tinnitus is within reach, and we're here to help. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast right now and join us on the journey to clearer sound and a richer life. Thanks for listening to the All Ears Hearing and Tinnitus podcast with Dr. Layne Garrett. We'll see you next time.